You're listening to a Comics XF podcast.
I am the Knight. I am Matt Lazowitz, and welcome to this week's episode of Bat Chat with Matt and Will, a Batman ranking podcast, where each week my co-hosts Will Nevin and I get 3 Batman stories, discuss them, and rank them on the big board, thus creating a giant list of Batman stories from best to worst. Will, how's it going tonight?
Hey, not too bad. Oh, I cannot navigate Zoom at the moment. We had to cancel the pub run tonight because of storms in the area. So I'm out of my routine. I don't care for that. I don't like changes. Changes are bad. The only interesting thing that I had to bring to you tonight is that I've been on a reading kick at the gym, as we've talked about, and I started reading Casino Royale. And you're a bondsman, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I thought it was very interesting, and I'm not too far into Casino Royale, but I am just after, I'm just at the point where Bond has been told he is going to have a female agent in this mission, and he calls her a bitch like immediately, and I certainly don't remember heavily like Casino Royale, the film, the Daniel Craig adaptation. It's been a while. But I remember certainly at the end where he refers to Vesper as a bitch. And I thought that having this in the novel brings it sort of full circle in terms of Bond having his heart hardened and, being just so broken by the whole experience. So I thought it was interesting to see that show up first in the novel.
The Bond of the novels is deeply misogynist.
Oh, of course.
Tremendously so, more than you'd expect from those movies. He is not a pleasant guy.
He's not supposed to be pleasant.
No. There's a video someone shared on social media years and years ago. I doubt I could find it again, but it's got the audio book of him saying horrible misogynist things over Daniel Craig in a car chase. And it's like, whoa, yeah. I've only read a couple of the books because of just how utterly unpleasant Bond is.
Yeah, that whole passage is preceded by just him talking about, oh, you have to take care of women, you have to look out for them, you have to carry their emotional baggage. They just complicate missions. Like, he's clearly not a good person. And I don't know how much of that is Fleming and how much of that is just Bond not supposed to be a good person.
I don't know enough about Fleming as a person to know which way that falls. Sometimes someone is showing their emotional ass, and sometimes they're just writing a character who is a bad person, and they're not necessarily the same thing, no matter what some people would have you believe.
Look, Paul Dini has perfectly fine relations with women. Perfectly fine.
I wasn't even thinking about that, but I can see where you're yeah, that is.
I am deeply saddened that The Bride is not doing well at the box office.
Did you see it?
No, I can't wait though. I'm very excited to see it.
Okay, then I'm gonna say nothing. I will not give any feelings one way or the other until you have seen it.
Ah, okay.
I saw 3 movies over the weekend, that being one of them. The other 2, the new Pixar, Hoppers, which is one of the better Pixars of recent years. Really enjoyed it. Very funny. I only teared up a couple times, so as Pixar's go, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun. And the other movie I saw was Protector, which isn't quite what my favorite movie podcast, We Hate Movies, calls a secret movie, which is something usually featuring some B-list or formerly A-list, now sort of forgotten star. The movie gets no publicity, maybe gets dropped in theaters for like a week before going nearly straight to VOD. This is,
The Eric Roberts of movies.
yes, Eric Roberts is a king of secret movies. But Protector did not get a lot of buzz, and after seeing it, it's Mila Jovovich
Okay.
doing a Taken. Literally, like her daughter is kidnapped by human traffickers. She is former special forces, and she goes on a killing spree to get her daughter back. There are, well, three major problems, and I'm going to spoil it because nobody out there is going to see this movie.
No.
Number one starts out with a series of chyrons. 170,000 people each year are stolen by human traffickers.
Oh, good, 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 good. We got Sound of Freedom vibes.
That was my fear that this is going to turn into a Sound of Freedom. It's not. It is much more, again, a Taken. The human traffickers are generic straw men. We're not going into the details of the networks and all this. So that already, I'm like, oh, I don't know how I feel about this. So daughter gets kidnapped. Jovovich sees the guys taking her daughter. You know, she's chasing the car. She jumps onto the car. She gets knocked off the car. And then she gets knocked out, fade to black. Her narration is a lot of narration. She, by the way, does her best with what she's given. Like she does she does a good job with it, but she's not given a lot to work with. But we get the classic, when a child is kidnapped, you have 72 hours to find them, or you will probably never find them. And then we see 72 hours, Chiron, or the digital clock, and then it speeds to like 44 hours, and you get a couple of quick flashes of her doing badass stuff, but then it immediately goes to her, like the first shot of actually lengthy shot is her tied up, hanging upside down. And I'm immediately like, oh, is this going to be one of these things where, don't worry, dads of middle America, yeah, she's a badass woman, but we're going to watch her get the shit kicked out of her so you don't have to feel inadequate.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily that, because if you had seen what happened directly after that, it would have spoiled the twist.
Oh, no.
Big fucking twist at the very end of the movie.
Oh, no.
Matthew Modine is her former commanding officer who's comes to try to get her, to get her in. And at the end, after she has wiped out all these human traffickers, it's a memento.
What?
Her daughter, who she has saved, she found her daughter dead. And now every time she goes to sleep, her mind resets to right after her daughter was kidnapped. No. So she keeps going out and killing human traffickers every time. Which, hey, you know what? Great. Kill as many human traffickers as you want. And there are definitely hints. And I was like, there's something wrong going on here, for sure. But if you had immediately gone from her getting knocked unconscious and had done the thing immediately, you would have seen that this is like the third of her arcs where she's gone and done this. So you wouldn't have been able to do the dumbass twist.
Ugh.
Yeah. So it basically is stealing from two better movies.
This reminds me of Afterburn, that terrible thing that Dave Bautista was just in that had a very similar twist. Just come up with a good actioner. You don't have to put some kind of nutty twist on it because it's not going to be good.
No, and especially in the case of Protector here, I think I've said this on this show before, but it's one of my clarion calls to these people who are making these kind of movies. Don't remind me of better movies in your middling movie.
No, that's a bad call. I shouldn't be reminded of the things that were better.
I remember there was a terrible, terrible horror movie I saw, and it kept referencing The Shining over and over again. These clear references to The Shining. And it's like, stop reminding me of a much better movie in your half-star, cheaply made, acted by your friends and or
Ooh.
the first year acting students at the community college movie. And I'm not saying that, it's bad to be an acting student in a community college. I'm saying that you have not had enough classes and you're still learning. And so you've been now thrown into being the leads in a movie, and that can be a problem.
Yeah.
But yeah,
There's a reason why community theater is just there in the community.
doing both Taken and Memento in the same movie was a bad choice.
Bad call. Bad call.
But I am curious to see what you think of The Bride when you see it.
I'm excited. I hope it's really, really, really fucked up.
You will not be disappointed in that.
Excellent.
But yeah, none of that's Batman.
Not a single bit of it.
And also, we have a guest who is just sitting there nicely while we yammer. Let's say hello to Patreon backer, friend of the show, Abigale Heartbalm. Hey, Abigail, how's it going?
Hey!
Going well. Ready to talk about some Batgirl?
Coming in from all the way down the hall.
Yes.
Well, we don't want to cross and make an echo.
Editor Matt very much appreciates that. But yeah, it's Abigail's Patreon request this week, and she specifically wanted to talk about the first arc of the current Batgirl series. So we're going to be reading 3 stories about one of comics' most strained mother-daughter relationships, Cassandra Cain and Lady Shiva. We're going to be going chronologically, so as that is the most recent Batgirl series, that will be the final story of the night. The first story of the night is I Am Become Death, the Destroyer of Worlds. This is Batgirl Volume 1, number 25. The writer is Kelly Puckett, with pencils by Damon Scott, inks by Roberto Campanella, colors by Jason Wright and Digital Chameleon, letters by John Costanza, and edited by Michael Wright. The cover date is April of 2002. The deadline has arrived. A year has passed since Lady Shiva helped Batgirl reclaim her lost ability to read body language. And now the 2 great warriors will face each other in a battle to the death that only one can survive.
Now, Puckett is most directly associated with the animated series, correct?
The animated series and Cassandra Cain, as he is her creator.
Oh, okay.
He wrote Mark of Cain in No Man's Land and did the first 33 issues of this series.
So he is close to the end of the run.
Yeah. We have done a handful of these issues. We did 2, which was the one-off Help Me Not to Die, where Cassandra is trying to save the guy who's been kidnapped by mobsters. 4 through 9, where she loses her ability to speak or to read body language, and where Shiva teaches her again. So that was the lead up to that. And then we did the final issue, 37, excuse me, 37, Thicker Than Water, where she realizes David Cain is her biological father. It is important to note that, as far as I know and everything I have read, Puckett did not intend Shiva to be her mother. That is a retcon from Anderson Gabrich from the end of this series, where we read that story a ways back. The one with Nyssa and Mr. Freeze and all that.
Interesting. Is there any indication who Puckett intended?
Not as far as I know.
Mm.
And I think it might have been more of a case of David Cain is her father. Her mother was someone who Cain was with. That he wanted a baby, so he made a baby for his experiment in making someone this body language reader person.
Now, we're going to be talking, obviously, about, as usual, 3 stories. Shiva factors heavily in all of them. You clearly know more about Cassandra than I do. Does she ever really grow beyond both this kind of preoccupation with both her father and her mother. Is there something other to the character than just continually recycling these ideas?
That is what the current ongoing is about.
Ah,
Also, in all fairness, we have read mostly stories that deal with Cassandra and her family. There are a lot of Cassandra stories that aren't about Lady Shiva and David Cain. We just haven't covered them.
that's very true.
Like a lot of Batgirls is not about that. A lot of Batgirls is much more about found family and her and Steph and Babs as this adorable little family unit.
Yeah, like that's what I was gonna chirp in with, which like I love, like if there was ever a comic that I want the CW to adapt as the next one, it's like just give me Batgirls. It writes itself. Give me some Batgirls. I want the three of them. I feel like the newest set or the newest series made this comic so much better for me. Part of me is like, now looking at it again and thinking about it, is that just because somebody else does something with something and makes it a lot better, does that make the original any better on its own?
That is a classic question when it comes to superhero comics because of the amount of stuff that gets written after the fact and makes for better stories. It also can very much be the opposite, as we have seen with Killing Joke over and over again. Killing Joke would still be problematic, even if it weren't for 40 years of people getting the wrong thing out of Killing Joke.
And the constant fucking references to it.
But the fact that we get that makes Killing Joke even more uncomfortable and problematic. And we do get that in the opposite here, whereas like, oh, all the things that Bromble does with the relationship between Cass and Shiva in the third story and the Order of Shiva and all of that makes this seem like, oh, all of this was so intentional. And no, it wasn't, but it's the glory of hindsight being 2020.
Which, and I guess that's true. My bit, like, and I'm curious to hear Will, my loving husband, because I believe I'm not putting words in his mouth if he's to say that he has said before, probably multiple times, show me, don't tell me. In my mind, if ever there was an example of, can you tell me some stuff on a couple of pages? Like, you don't have to tell me the entire time. Whereas, like, just, I hate reading a comic, and when I get to page 8, I'm like, oh, that's okay. That's what was going on. And getting pulled out of it and having to go back.
This volume of Batgirl is intentionally sparse on dialogue and narration because of Cass's learning communication. She doesn't think, if there was ever a book to do something like what Mark Waid did in Impulse, where Impulse's thought bubbles were little emojis before there were emojis. They were little pictures rather than words. Cass is a character at this point who that would be how she's thinking.
And I get that. Again, not to just that I'm way more excited to talk about our third story. I feel like the third story handles that in such a more elegant, beautiful way that I absolutely love. Not just it being me as the reader, like, wow, this chick is really silent, but it's showing me, no, she walks into a room and these are the things that she's thinking about. And it shows me that of she's like this. And I love her inner monologue of basically having a whole conversation with herself about what her mother is not saying based on all of it. And that I really love. This one, I'm just not willing to fully extend to it that it's like, oh yeah, well, Cass is a very silent person. like, I completely understand that her as a character doesn't need to be speaking, but I would have liked some more. Put her into the world so I, as the reader, can experience her in the light you want me to see and not get lost.
Well, what's the larger context of this issue? And certainly, I think our third story does reference this particular issue as something important.
If you recall, we did read the first meeting between Cassandra and Shiva, which was back in issue like 7 or 8. That was episode 159, so it was quite a while ago, where Cass had lost her ability to read people. A psychic had gone into her head and sort of rearranged her brain so she could better understand verbal language and speak, but it had cost her that ability. So she went to Shiva to sort of reawaken her skills, because Bruce had done exactly that during Night's End. And so she figured, well, it's good enough for Bruce. And Shiva agreed to do this, but in 1 year, they would meet again and they would fight to the death, which is a Shiva's thing during the period of the 90s through the early aughts, is that Shiva is more or less this Ronin who's just traveling around and fighting the world's greatest fighters and killing them to prove she's the best.
Mm.
And that's where we get to the end here, and we get a little twist on that with Cassandra realizing that Shiva has a death wish, that she is looking for someone to finally beat her, which I don't think had ever been elaborated on before this or made clear. I read a fascinating Tumblr post of all things, and like someone wrote it with an incredibly detailed look at all of the different iterations of Lady Shiva's origin and how issues 7 and 8 of this most recent Batgirl series, that is Shiva's past from her own perspective in a diary, takes aspects from all of them and creates some kind of coherent narrative using bits and pieces. I will link to that in the post when I post this.
The Rucka Wonder Woman approach.
Yes, very much so. So this is trying, it feels like, to give more depth to Shiva just being this wandering murderer, which is what she was in the hands of Chuck Dixon, who wrote the majority of Shiva stories in the 90s, in Robin and Green Arrow and a little bit in the Bat books. That was the Paper Monkey era.
We love that Paper Monkey.
We do. So we do get a little more depth with Shiva here. But if this is a slightly oversized issue, this is maybe 32 pages, 38 somewhere. Of that, 2/3 of it is just a fight. And that is, I think, because Damon Scott, he and Puckett did that in all of these issues together. Both Mark of Cain back in No Man's Land, and then this entire 37-issue run with a couple of fill-ins in there. I think part of what they were doing together was giving Scott, who is this very kinetic artist, the widest canvas to draw all this combat.
Which I will say, as somebody who's usually, when I'm on this podcast, I'm talking about the pretty pictures, there are some art that I just love. The bottom of the page, when she grabs her mom's arm and like strikes her across the face, it looks and feels kinetic. As well as I do love how it ends. You've got these two broken people who are broken in their own way, and in their own way have found fighting and physical violence as a way that they're dealing with the ways that they're broken. And there's so little common ground between them, if there is any whatsoever. But the last page is just the two of them exhausted, almost in a moment of closeness, lying on the ground next to each other, saying, like, I'm going to kill you. Yeah, but not tonight. They're almost as though there's like I use the word sparingly, but catharsis, that they've had some almost catharsis from their physical outburst, because that's a language that they both actually can speak well, and they use it to channel their emotions.
Shiva obviously speaks more in this story than Cass, and so we get stuff from Shiva's perspective. I like that it's Shiva who finally realizes that Cass's guilt is not just about the man she killed, but the fact that because of the way Cass sees the world, she died with him. He pulled her sort of with him as he died. And so it adds another layer on top of, oh, she just realized that it's bad to kill. She realized it's bad to kill because she sees what that does to a person in a way that the rest of us never will.
Yeah, like there's a weird balance I love, and I feel like that does sort of describe it with Cass, of she's somebody who almost has 100% pure empathy, because she's entirely able to capture exactly what's going on with a person. And she's able to get all of the signals, but there's a side of those signals that she doesn't know how to deal with, but she gets them nonetheless.
And it's because David Cain didn't teach her how to process emotions. And he, I guess, assumed that that would make her perfect killing machine because she wouldn't feel them. No, he just didn't give her any way to process the feelings that she's having, and so it made her feel everything all the more.
Yeah, like if she's got no filter for anything that's going on in the world around her.
Two other quick notes I have. I did like the moment when she's on the observation deck of the building and the guy walks up and she just sees him out of the corner of her eye and just says, "Don't jump." That she's immediately able to read that intention.
Yeah.
As one of the entries in the long, proud line of embarrassing admissions I make on this show, I thought that guy was shit. Why am I drawing a blank?
John Constantine?
Yes, I thought it was Constantine popping in.
Okay, you cannot have. Okay, I'm glad you say this. And this is like the Heartbalm Nevin household. You cannot have a guy in a tan overcoat with a white button-up shirt and a red tie and not expect me to be like, oh, is this artist's interpretation of John Constantine?
The only thing, and this is coming from context that neither of you have because of your ages / when you started reading comics. This is the period where Constantine didn't appear in the DC universe, when he was purely a Vertigo character. There was a period where if you were in Vertigo, you didn't appear in the DC universe. So Constantine, Swamp Thing, they were siloed over in Vertigo. So that would have never occurred to me because he just wasn't a DC universe character at that moment, despite having been one originally. But then they moved those characters over to Vertigo, and you just sort of sat there. And it was a big deal when a Vertigo character showed up in a DC Universe book. The other thing, and I love to say these kind of things because I know that it's not going to happen, but I'm going to just point it out. Remember the nerve blow that Cassandra gives to Barbara to freeze her. That is a significant move that will come up in a future story. That is a big clue for something that happens a little ways down the line in Batgirl and the Bat books.
I will say, we got to figure out whether Barbara needs glasses or not, especially as we roll into the next story.
Thank you. There's there's small reasons why, there's big reasons why I love you, but there's also small ones of just like, is she doing a Clark Kent? What's going on?
There are contact lenses. Maybe she wears her contacts someday. No, I really think that has to do with some artists like to draw her with glasses and some don't. But
Yeah, it's like the Michael Keaton in Batman. He's in the Batcave doing work, so he puts on his glasses to be very smart and professional while he's doing the science stuff.
he needs his readers. Anyone have anything else to add?
The art, it's two people punching each other for a bunch of pages, but they feel very distinct in their body motions, which I just like that because I feel like a lot of thought went into like Shiva's constantly doing just you can see that there's almost like a style that's different between the two of them just by the art, which I think is really important, especially for a book like this, because that is kind of the story and that is a lot of the pages. It's not just them punching each other, it's a fight, and you can sort of see that they have a different mentality almost of like Shiva's very direct, whereas Cass is again, I just love that frame of her punching her mother in the face.
I really wish more artists would have a better feel for martial arts and the different styles in which people would fight. That Batman shouldn't look like Lady Shiva, shouldn't look like Batgirl, shouldn't look like Damian, shouldn't look like Nightwing. They all should have very distinct physicalities, and not every artist gets that. But Scott is so focused on it, he is one of the better ones when it comes to it.
It reminds me of probably my chief complaint in the FX shots in the last episode of Picard, where the Enterprise moves like a fighter or like an escort. That's not what you want. Like they should have different feels, different energies. Like you don't want Bruce hopping and moving around like Nightwing or feeling like he can move around like Nightwing. Like, yes, they are both effective fighters. And if we're going to be honest, Bruce probably better than Nightwing if we're talking like power levels and fighters and whatnot. But they need to have very distinct styles.
Nightwing fights like he talks. He's running around you. He's bouncing. He's keeping you off your guard. Batman is solid. Batman plants his feet, blocks your moves, and finds your weaknesses and slips past. They are
Exactly.
very distinct methods, very different martial arts. But there's Cassandra who can do all of those things. That she is the one who is all. That's fine because that's what she is. And frankly,
She's the cheat code.
yeah, pretty much. And Shiva's as close to that as you can come.
Well, I think that means it's time to put I Am Become Death Destroyer of Worlds Batgirl Volume 1, number 25 on the big board.
We are at 690 stories on the big board.
God damn, coming up on the big 700.
Number 1 is the post-crisis origin of Batman, Batman Year 1.
Coming in at a sexy 69 is Batman Annual number 4, Volume 3, Every Day.
At 150 is The Joker Presents a Puzzle Box, the Rashomon villains telling different stories about a crazy heist story. At 300 is Shadowing the Bat, the 2-issue arc where Cameron Chase tries to find out Batman's identity.
Coming in real high, not nearly as close to the bottom as it once was at number 420, it's Legends of the Dark Knight, Riddler in the Dark.
At 450 is Nightfall Rising, the Barbara Gordon Batgirl story from the New 52 where she fights a violent vigilante named Nightfall.
Not that Nightfall.
And all the way at the bottom, it's Three Jokers.
Big old dog turd of a story. My goodness.
So, as I said, we have a handful of stories from this series on the big board, and they mostly fall between the mid threes to the mid fours. 323 is the highest with Speech and Consequences, issues 4 to 9. And the lowest is 421, Thicker Than Water, the last issue at 421. So they're literally within 100 issues of each other.
Well, different volume, same character ish. 350 Batgirl Volume 4, Minefields.
That's the end of the Batgirl of Burnside era. There's obviously more story there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the reasons why the first story that we have from this volume is where it is up at 323 versus the others, is because that's 6 issues versus the others, which are one-offs. So much of this volume of Batgirl is one-offs, and they feel sparse because there is so little dialogue. It's very much an artist showcase. But the fact that they're in the 300s and 400s means it's by no means bad, because that's a decent showing. That's, the middle of the list. I think for historical significance, if I'm having a hard time deciding if it's better or worse, this is more important. So I think it might get a little bit of a bump from that.
Does it beat Batgirl Year 1 at 339?
No.
Okay, so almost by definition, we're in the 340s.
Yes. I am thinking either above or below one of Swamp Thing. So just right shortly below that. So either the new 341 or the new 342. Swamp Things is that Killer Croc and Swamp Thing. See, that was a thing where it was a big deal during that period when Swamp Thing showed up in Batman. It's like, hey, Swamp Thing, who hasn't really appeared in a DC Universe book in a while, he's back.
Let's go below.
Okay, so in between Swamp Things and Once Upon a Crime?
Yeah.
Okay. Our second story of the night is Vice Versa. This is Batgirl's Annual 2022 and Batgirl's number 13. The writers are Becky Cloonan and Michael Conrad, with art by Robbie Rodriguez and Jonathan Case, colors by Rico Renzi and Case, letters by Dave Sharp and Case, and edited by Jessica Burby, Jessica Chen, and Ben Abernathy. The cover dates are January to February of 2023. No good deed goes unpunished. After helping a little old lady get her cat out of a tree, a mystical coin has caused the Batgirls to switch bodies, and it couldn't have happened at a worse time. Lady Shiva is back in Gotham and wants to talk to Cassandra, so Steph and Cass's body has to go, and someone else is hunting Stephanie with their own complicated relationship to the other Batgirl.
Speaking of family we just can't get away from, shocked to see Clue Master pop up.
Yeah, and that feeds into the next arc, which is obviously all about Steph and her dad after this two-parter with Shiva and Cass and the setup of the Clue Master thing. We go into a Clue Master Stephanie arc after this.
I never thought I'd feel so excited to see Clue Master. When I saw him, I was like, "It's Clue Master! Ah, it's her dad!" Like,
I was almost gonna send a message and be like, "Let's read that," but it is really a distinct arc. It is a very different thing that's going on in those next 2 or 3 issues that are really about Stephanie and Clue Master, and not Shiva isn't there. It's not about any of that. It's really just about that. So it will serve its own spot on the big board at some point. And it does pay off his resurrection from the end of Eternal. That is all discussed and how it fucked him up. I marvel at just how friggin' charming various books about the Batgirls have been in the past decade or so. Between that last volume of Pre-New 52, Brian Miller, Stephanie Brown Batgirl, this and this current run, the Batgirls have gotten some really great runs, and this is just a fun freaking comic.
I know it's an annual, and this is to me what I want in an annual. I just want give me more of it. The page where it's instead of panels, it's like a bunch of Polaroids of the two of them, like on the couch together watching a movie and doing like a fortune teller game. Like that's what I want to see. And like just love the Babs is moving out and they're like saying they're okay, but it's also like they're losing a family member, like their parents are leaving. As well as I'm on the side. I like me text panels. And I love the text panels in this annual. The joke about Calendar Man, and then it references breaking the fourth wall that it's making a joke about Calendar Man. I love that. But also, I like all the information they add. I want to know that they're at the Gotham Museum. By the way, locals in Gotham, they call it the GM. I want that information.
The narration in that annual is charming. It's fun. Oh, I can't remember what it was. There's something in one of the first pages about, does anybody else miss this? And then you see the other panel of the two little hands up, hands raised emojis from the editors. It's very cute. And it's a great place to pick this book up because the first year had all these subplots that they had been running wrapped up at the end of the previous issue, at issue 12. So now we are getting new subplots that are starting here, and the next phase of this book begins here. So they do a lot of explanation, a lot of introduction, but it doesn't feel onerous. It's done in a way that is exciting and fun.
And I think one of the things I love, which like you could tell me there are some issues of Batgirls where it goes into a buddy cop thing, but I like that, especially this issue, and so much of it is it's not the girl who's quiet, who can't stand a girl who likes to talk all the time. It's like, no, they're different, but they get along with each other and they grow from each other. There's not like a, oh, you moment at all with them. And I just really adore, like, the narration on the page with the Polaroids talking about friendship. I just feel is like a chef's kiss to the first year of Batgirls, of just how there's the importance of, which I think we see a lot in the first 6 issues that we'll talk about in the next story. But it's like Cass is searching kind of for replacement parent figures, which she finds in Bruce as like a replacement father figure. But there's like the importance of having a friend and the friendship and how that helps you grow too and becomes kind of your family.
Found family is the sort of central thing for Cassandra because she had no family, or what family she had was the worst. And so has always been looking for that family. There's a spread that we will discuss in the next issue that does something great with that. The art on that annual is fabulous. And it's Robbie Rodriguez, who at this point is best known as the co-creator of Spider-Gwen. He's better known for his Marvel work than his DC work, but he did some of the Rebirth era Batgirl series, a bunch of that, like one-offs and bits and bobs during Rebirth and Infinite Frontier. But his best known for his Marvel stuff. But he does this annual, and I think another issue or two of Batgirls before it's over. I think it's a really great issue, and it has really nice interaction between the characters. Again, those Polaroids. I love the page of Steph having an awkward, not really a date with Kyle Mizoguchi from Gotham Academy. and
they
them
hold pinkies. It's so adorable.
and both of them like, yeah, we're both not completely over our messy relationships that we just got out of. And he and Maps show up quite a bit in the course of this run, and it's fun to see Cass interacting with a person who talks even more than Steph in Maps.
All right, so let me get in here with my gripes. First, it's fairly contrived in the second issue that Stephanie Brown is gagged. We clearly don't have the page space to explore the other half of the body switch. And you work with the real estate you got, fine, whatever, fairly contrived. I think the annual is stronger than 13 because the colors in 13 are spectacular. They are vibrant, they are beautiful, they are great. They are not great for action, at least to my eyes, because Cassandra and Shiva basically looked the same. So that was difficult. And have a letterer. Don't do your own letters because they're not going to be great. And I did not care for these in 13.
I will admit it is sort of impressive that Case was a one-man shop on this book. That doesn't happen very often.
For good reason, I think.
I will say, yes, the annual art-wise was the stronger of the two. I also have to just be like, wait, Madame Zodiac? Really? Madame Zodiac is a character F-list villain. This is a character who has, I can count the number of appearances of Madame Zodiac before this on both my hands. Very obscure character. That is a deep, deep cut.
Would have preferred if she just found a coin in the gutter. Because I did have a full thought with myself. So was Madame Zodiac's plan, I'm going to get my cat, which is very magical looking with its two different color eyes. But the cat is in the tree meowing, clearly scared that it's stuck in the tree. So she forcibly puts her cat in the tree to then wait, hoping at 3 a.m. somebody's going to come save it. How many times has this poor cat been stuck in that tree? And it's just, nope, nobody came. In 13, one thing I did really like is how it talks about how Lady Shiva can't read Stephanie, because Stephanie doesn't have a methodic fighting style of like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. She's just off the cuff spontaneity. And I really like that, how it fits with her. And again, it fits the two of them being kind of opposites.
Yes. And I think I loved Steph more or less in a somewhat nicer way, telling off Shiva about what Cass really is. That there is that thing that your friends will always know you better than your parents. Or at least in a different way than your parents.
There's something about how Shiva is closed off because she thinks it's Cass. But then she's almost a little vulnerable when she's like, oh, this isn't Cass. So let me tell you kind of what I actually feel about Cass. Like, I'd never tell it to her, but we can actually have kind of a conversation if you're not actually my daughter.
And if worst comes to worst, I'll just kill you because I'm Lady Shiva. And I do that.
Kinda. She definitely seems like the kind of person who goes to a therapist and at the end was like, this was so helpful. This was great. Now I'm going to kill you. I do love when Cass in Steph's body wakes up on the top bunk and falls off. I just think that's such a playful thing, and her facial expression in the bottom left panel is so great of just angry and WTF. I really like me some Batgirls.
And while having the three separate things going on in a standard size comic of issue 13 meant that I didn't get as much of freaking body swaps. It becomes hard to, Steph and Shiva. There are a couple of really nice moments between Babs and Bruce. Bruce is trying to be a human being here and doing a pretty good job of it in how he interacts with Barbara because he understands what she's going through, what it's like to feel the responsibility for these people, and what it feels like when it feels like something could go wrong.
Yeah, like his line is literally like, well, of course you feel this way. I know I did.
Still
Like,
do.
I don't know. I really just like this. I like the different shades of their relationship because I like Babs being there with them in a very paternal figure or maternal figure of like, I'm the parent. But then we also get to see Babs talking to Bruce, and it's like sort of switched of it's like sort of almost talking to her somewhat father figure of a parental figure that was there for her, and she's now grown of like, I've got my own kids almost. How'd you deal with me?
It's just funny reading my notes. I'm like, wait, I say Steph here. I say Cass. Do I mean the body or do I mean the mind? And it
Right.
freaking body swaps. I loved the Twilight Zone reference. Will, I know you're pretty Twilight Zone. Did you pick up the little reference?
Ooh, where was that?
The coin landing on its side. There's an episode of the Twilight Zone called A Penny for Your Thoughts.
And he can read minds.
Yes.
And he thinks the guy's robbing the bank, and the guy's like, I don't know how you did it. I've spent every afternoon for the past 10 years going over in my mind how I would rob this bank.
It's Dick York of Bewitched.
Yes, I have seen it.
And
Absolutely.
somehow what makes him able to read minds is he flips a penny into the newspaper guy's little change receptacle and it winds up on its side. And at the end of the episode, when he gets the evening edition, he flips it and it knocks over that coin. And the guy's like, hey, that was, oh, it's you. I guess if anybody was going to knock it over, it might have well have been you. And then he can't read minds anymore. So it felt to me like, oh, mind swap, reading that it's a little bit of a Twilight Zone nod. It would be too weird that there wasn't something intentional about referencing that here.
I can see it.
Because Steph wakes up in Cass's body. Did Steph wake up in Cass's body and feel like discombobulated and anxious? So she put on her unicorn pajamas? Or does Cass have unicorn pajamas of her own that Steph woke up in? These are the big questions that I need dialogue boxes for.
Oh, I am sure Stephanie bought Cassandra unicorn pajamas. I would have liked to have spent a little more time of Cassandra being awkward in Steph's body because, for want of a better analogy, being in Steph's body is like driving a really nice car. Cassandra's body is a F1 high performance race car that you can't imagine what it's like to drive this thing. So they're both awkward in each other's bodies in very different ways. And I would have liked to have seen a little more time with that.
In my mind, I would almost, as much as I love, I do love the scenes with Steph and Shiva, but I almost wish we had some more, and it ended with Cass going up into the helicopter, and the annual ended with Steph being captured, and we had sort of like those pages that were that part of the annual could be the Cassandra and Steph's body side of it.
All we've got to do is travel back in time a couple of years and give a few editorial notes.
Yeah, I'm
Just a few.
sure the people who are editing this and writing it absolutely adore it when a fangirl comes in and says, let me tell you what would be a good idea and how you should be doing your job.
That's why we have the podcast. We can Wednesday morning quarterback ourselves to pieces here and don't have to bother anybody except those who listen.
But it's no longer Wednesday morning quarterbacking.
It will always be in my heart.
Oh, I think that means it's time. But Batgirl's annual 20 double deuce. Batgirl's number 13, vice versa. On the big board.
I think we're moving up from where we just were. I have a hard ceiling, and I don't think it's necessarily this high, but it is a hard ceiling at 205, which is
Ooh.
the first arc of the Stephanie Brown Batgirl series. It's not going above that. I don't think it's going up that high, but it can't beat that. I'm just looking for comps. I was like, okay, it's not going above that.
Well, we just talked this story. Chase 7 and 8 shadowing the bat at 300. Better?
I really love Chase. The art is more consistent there. J.H. Williams, I mean, oof. Do you think this should go above that?
Mm. 13 again. I had trouble with the action.
Okay. I mean, I think that we can put it below there.
Okay.
Here's 307, League of Shadows. That is the Tynion arc about Shiva and the League of Shadows. That has wildly inconsistent art.
Oh yeah.
Because that's like 6 artists over 7 issues.
Say it's probably better. Better than that. So that puts us between 300 and 307?
Yes. How does 302 sound? Right below Batman Santa Claus, right above I Joker.
I like it.
All right.
And now, let's go to Matt Lazowitz for the final story of the night.
And our final story of the night is Mother. This is Batgirl Volume 6, numbers 1 to 6. The writer is Tate Bromble, with art by Takeshi Miyazawa, colors by Mike Spicer, letters by Tom Napolitano, and edited by Jessica Burby and Rob Levin. The cover dates are January to June of 2025. A martial arts cult known as the Unburied is hunting Lady Shiva and her bloodline, so Cassandra and Shiva are forced to go on the run together. They will need to meet with allies who Cassandra is less than thrilled to work with, but more than that, they must make one final attempt to correct their relationship before the Unburied kill them all. This is the current running Batgirl series, so there is a lot here that we don't have resolution on currently. So just stating that sort of for a fact that we don't have the final fate of the Unburied and what's going on there. We still don't know who their mysterious leader is. We are only now learning more about the blood of Wu. So we are in a place where we don't have all the answers, which is different than what we often do here, but this is in itself a fairly self-contained aspect of this series because of where it ends.
Going back to Will's initial comment of, is Cass always dealing with her mother and the issues? The thing I love about this story is at the start, Cass is like, I've got some issues. I've got issues with my mom. And we see this in, I think it's issues either 3 and 4. It must be 3 and 4 with the train fight sequence, which is phenomenal. I love those 2 splash pages. But just the dialogue boxes of that she's like, no, I am
Barbara's will and Stephanie's heart. I am Tim's wit, Jason's grit, Damien's guts. I am Duke's hope and Dick's faith. I am Alfred's care. I am Bruce's pride. I am Batgirl. I am all of that and so much more.
And like, to me, it's almost like it's the same relationship, but now she's going back to her mother of being like, before I was here and I was what you made me, but I didn't know what I was or who I was. Now I know who I am, and I don't know how to deal with you yet. And I have unresolved mom issues, who wouldn't? But I know who I am, and I know what I am, and I know that I'm a force for good. And I was so happy reading this newest arc that that's the place that she's starting. We're not going backwards with Cass of being like, it's no, she's done all of that already. And she's like, I am Batgirl. Like, and I know what that means to me.
And so much of this is Cass processing this relationship and putting it to bed as much as one can with a parental relationship and learning to see Shiva not as what she has always thought she was, but what she actually is.
And it's like, also, it's kind of like the stages of a relationship of like seeing your parents when you're a kid to then maybe getting some catharsis about your parents now that you're a full adult and that you are like you're your own person and you can be like, oh crap, I kind of realized they're actually their own person too, with their own things going on. I also just, again, I love these 6 issues, how they show Cass's what's going on. Like when they're in the train car after they've made the run for it and they're on their way out of Gotham, it's just like the second she's in the train car, it like zeroes in with the yellow box of it's just like that guy, his facial expressions, that's a threat. That guy, I can tell from him, he has fear of me. Like, and it's just like constantly that's what her mind is doing whenever she's around people, is zeroing in on things. I just really adored that, as well as her inner monologue. I feel like it's almost, even though it's all text, it's like showing me, not telling me. It's not telling me, hey, Cass has super acute senses and she's constantly reading people's body language. It's showing me, even though it is text. But I don't know if that makes sense.
I think overall the narration here is very good.
Yes, it is because it is deeply personal. It's not
Mm.
exposition. It's not explaining what's going on. It's explaining what is in a character's head. And it's also efficient. There's a good amount of it, but it never overtakes the art or the page. The narration here is never a crutch that the writer and the artist are depending on to get the story over. You could remove the narration and you would still probably be able to understand what's going on. It adds another level to the comic. And that's what makes narration work.
Yeah, it's like almost like the narration's the orchestra. It's cueing me into what's going on, but it's not overpowering what's on the page already that it's on top of. I also just shout out, I love, again, it's retcon. And again, it is. 2020 hindsight, it's so easy to make decisions. But I love her just seeing, like, she had this moment with her mother and it meant one thing to her. And now there's all these followers who are, you're the heir of Shiva, and they're like, no, that's part of our scriptures, you coming back to life. And it's just the same way she's realizing she had moments, but those moments meant different things to her mother in a broader sense. She's also realizing moments in her life meant different things to this much broader scope of this. I was going to use the word cult. They're a little cultish.
They call themselves the cult of Shiva, so you can
Yeah, so
say
that's fair. And I loved that the artist in, I think, I want to say, like, when it's talking about that, it literally does frame for frame redraws of the prior book we read. And I just loved seeing that. Again, I just love another reason to see the two of them beat up, lying with their heads next to each other. Uh, it's so good.
and more than that, that sequence draws from that, from their first meeting earlier in that Batgirl series. It also has panels from League of Shadows where they meet for the first time in the post New 52 continuity. It gives this really kind of holistic look at Cass and Shiva's relationship in a nice 2-page spread. And stuff from Destruction's Daughter as well, when Cass leaves Shiva hanging over the Lazarus pit.
Yeah, I don't like the term post New 52 continuity just because I feel like it ages me a lot. Because I remember being in a comic book store and they were like, the new thing is the New 52.
And I guess I've been at this long enough that everything makes me feel old, so I just accept it.
But yeah, like I just want to say it again. The 2 splash pages where they're fighting through the train, and they lead up to the 3rd page, which in its own right, where it's the connection between the 2 cars, and she's kicking somebody. It's just like I could not give a better chef's kiss of this is how you do a splash page, of having so much beautiful art in action. But again, just her inner monologue, like again, you read it off of she's like, I'm Bruce's pride, I'm Tim's wit. So good.
There's a lot of really good narration, really good dialogue. The back and forths between Shiva and Cass in a bunch of places here are great. And I love that there's multiple times where they talk about the way they're interacting and they address it, as that was a wasted jab. That even their conversation is combat.
Right, her mother they're both so calculating with how they speak to each other. And or just like when she again gets on the train and she kicks her mother in the face. We might be learning something about my own relationship with my mother, but it's such a great panel when she kicks her mother in the face and her mother bleeding says, you can make me bleed all you want, but it's your blood too. I love that line.
And when Cass shows Shiva the photo of the Bat family, and Shiva looks at her with this almost contempt, and you fooled them. You almost look like you belong. And Cass just headbutts her.
And again, I just love that she's not like her mother. There's no arc of her mother, like a mini arc in this of her mother getting in her head and her being like, maybe I am just fooling everybody. She's like, no, and just headbutts her mom. Like,
she knows who she is, or at least she knows she is not who her mother wants her to be.
Right. Whereas she's not perfect with her emotions of like, I'm 100%, I know who I am, but she's also not emotionally lost.
Yeah. I mean, she's 21 years old. Who knew who they were perfectly when they were 21 years old?
I could tell you stories.
While the emotional spine of this is all of the Cass and Shiva stuff, this is all surrounded by what feels like a Hong Kong action ninja movie with the Unburied and the Cult of Shiva and the League of Shadows and the Blood of Wu. There's a lot of things being introduced because most of that is new stuff. The Unburied and the Blood of Wu are completely new concepts, and the Cult of Shiva, this really takes what was a minor point where, oh yeah, there are these people around the world who worship Shiva, and that was always just sort of what it was. Like they would occasionally show up to give her aid or for her to kick their ass. But now adding the aspect of Shiva as both the destroyer and the restorer, and creating this much fuller mythology around the Cult of Shiva is great work. Bromble does a phenomenal job building the world that this book takes place in.
Here in the Cult of Shiva, we have exactly 2 career paths for you. You can kill everyone you meet, or you can patch them up. It's really up to you. It's whatever you think you're good at.
There's gonna be a lot of killing, but killing people, you take some nicks. You need some healers. You see, to me, that made perfect sense. This goes back to my comment about, like, what was her plan? To just leave her poor cat in the tree every single night until somebody saves it? It's like, no, of course you cannot have a functional party without a healer. Everybody knows this.
And it's
But
not like, religious orders don't do that. Like, you don't sign up to be a Jesuit monk, and it's like, you're told that this is what you do.
I also loved, I'm probably mispronouncing it, Ba Bao.
Oh, yeah, I think you are correct. I think that is the proper pronunciation on that.
And just at the start of the scene, Cass comes in and she's like, Kitty? And she was like, Kitty? And then there's just like almost, there is like this antagonism that Shiva has of, this is one of my daughter's mother figures that she found to replace me, and I don't like her.
Yes. I don't think we've ever really. It's been a long time since I read it. I don't remember how Shiva interacted with Barbara when Shiva was a bird of prey. But that was also when Cass was evil. So I don't know how much of a thing that was, but I would think that there would definitely be some not great feelings between Shiva and Babs. Not only because of Cass, but because Barbara's friendship with Canary, who Shiva has also wanted to be her apprentice, and who she instead decided to stay with Barbara and the Birds of Prey. So Barbara and Shiva, I doubt, have a great rapport between them.
And just that then when they're talking, Shiva and the older woman are talking, and she's like, you must be so proud of your daughter. And she was like, "Rrr." But then it zoomed, like, I just love the art is so good. Well, that conversation is happening. We zoom out of the kitchen and we just see Cass doing punching techniques with the young guy with his headphones that almost has like a younger brother. It felt like a younger brother to me. It's like she's got this little micro family.
The stuff with Babao is phenomenal. And Miyazawa does such a good job. And it's like, this is Miyazawa's first real DC work. Miyazawa's a Marvel artist. Miyazawa was the second artist on Runaways after Adriana Alfona left.
Oh.
So that's where I'm most familiar with Miyazawa's work. But boy, they do a great freaking job. They're another artist who really knows how to make combat look good and make the way the characters fight distinct. Each of those three grandmasters of the Unburied fight in different ways. And a giant pair of scissors is a fucked up weapon.
Not just the giant pair of scissors, that from out of the panel, you just read snip, snip, and then the guy's been snip, snip. There's nothing I hate more than when it's like, okay, so you guys are just interchangeable? You're all just the same big guy? Like, I love, like,
And what we get with the Unburied as a concept is this, in everyone's case, as far as we at least know at this point, it's all about the sins of the parents. That Cass is being hunted because she is Shiva's daughter, and Nisa is being hunted because she is Raish's daughter, and Raish and Shiva are the ones who wronged the Unburied. And so now the children are paying for the sins of their parents. And bringing Nisa Al Ghul back, Nisa Rotko, excuse me, because while she says she isn't Al Ghul, I don't think she ever addresses herself as Nisa Al Ghul. She uses the Rotko name. If there was ever a time to bring Nisa back, it is in a Batgirl series, since, as she points out, Cass is the one who killed her. But Al Ghuls don't really die.
It's kind of their thing.
And I am in many ways shocked that it took any writer this long, because this was last year. So this was 20 years since Batman Begins. And this is the first time we have seen the blue poppy appear in the comics. I'm shocked that it took 20 years. It has different abilities than in Begins, but it's still the blue poppy.
It's real. I'm really happy with this run of Batgirl. I also love how when she's knocked out and she's talking to Steph, that Steph is like, "No, you talk." And she opens up a bit and does a bunch of talking to Steph. This writes itself also as kind of a CW show of just little quips I love. Of she wakes up and her mom's right side up and she's upside down. And they like start talking and she's like, "Did you like your nap?"
I think my favorite quip is actually Nissa Al Ghul. I come back from the dead with a sense of humor and no one appreciates it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of these books. The same way I can talk a lot about how I was a fan of the New 52 Batgirl and those first like 12 books of that, I can talk sort of this is highly about this. So no pressure when you guys decide where to put it on the list, Will.
On top of quips, there are just so much of the interaction is so good and so well written. And the moment when Cass is just angry because all of this is because of Shiva and she's trying to figure out why Shiva went and why she screwed with the unburied and why she brought all of this down on them. I am Lady Shiva. I am what I am. And I think it's right after that. What do you not understand? You are sacred to me, daughter. And that is a war that I will not lose. You are my mother. I was born a wound. I want to trust you, to choose you, but every single time there is pain, and I am tired of pain. Some wounds never heal. We are what we are.
Also, I love the art of when they're leaving the city and she's on the top of the train with her mom and she's like beaten. I also just love that the bat signal's going off at the top of the page. Because it's like she feels like she's abandoning Gotham, her city, when it needs her to go off on this adventure with her mother. And it just, I felt that without it having to do exposition of, and Batgirl felt that she was deeply, like, letting down people.
And I love the moment how they get out of the cave. Something my father taught me. And using the bats to get past the unburied. Then, in the end, we get this beautiful moment where Cass finally sees that Shiva loves her as Shiva chooses to stay behind and sacrifice herself to let Cass get past. I remain doubtful that Shiva is really dead because she is Lady Shiva. And Brombo would have to do something really, he'd have to do something really good to make what I initially thought was going on work. Because based on that ending, if Shiva really was willing to sacrifice herself for Cass, it redefines the relationship. I honestly thought that as we never see who the leader of the Unburied is, and Kalden and the others are talking about who it might be, I thought it might have been Shiva, and this whole thing I
had the same thought.
Was a way to get Cass to interact with her in a different way.
And come back into the fold in a way of, like, get her away from the Bat family. So I orchestrated all of this mayhem, and I blew up my own cult depot.
Right. Dojo, temple, whatever. Yeah. But I feel like we've done so much work to get Cass to this place that having it turn out that this was all Shiva manipulating everything, you'd have to really do something with it, which it might. We aren't talking about this, but when we meet Cass's brother, who believes Shiva is the great hero, it's why I know she has to be alive, at least at some point, because we need to see.
If that was her death, she essentially died off camera.
Right. And it can't be that. So we're gonna see Shiva again before this run is out. I just don't know how. Yes, I love Jayesh, the guy in charge of the Temple of Shiva. He was just so fun and so charming, and he, more than anything else, allows for us to understand that there's more to the cult of Shiva. Because Shiva could say whatever she wanted, but it's seeing this guy.
And it's seeing it through his eyes, and I just love Cass having to talk to him and be like, you are not what I was expecting for one of my mother's cultists. And the way you're talking about my mother, it's like, have you met her? Who is this woman you're talking about?
And that's very true to life.
Yeah.
Seeing your parents through the eyes of someone else is a very different thing than seeing them through your own eyes.
If you take out the killings, it is a very grounded mother-daughter story at its core.
If you take out the killings and the cults
It's
and supernatural ninjas, very grounded.
It is literalizing the metaphorical combat between a parent and child. I think we have gotten to the end here.
As someone who killed both of his parents in duels, I can relate to this story. Oh, that means it's time. But Batgirl, Volume 6, 1-6. Mother! On the big board!
This is Story of the Night.
So that puts it above 302.
Yes. I am willing to say, and you know what this means, Will, in me saying this. I'm willing
That
to
would be above Blades at 249?
Exactly. I am willing to put it above 249.
We've been doing this show for more than 200 episodes, Matt.
You know me.
Yeah, that I do. Okay. Mark of Cain at 220.
You know, I think we can go above that.
Okay.
Because that might introduce Cassandra, but this is the story that takes everything that has gone before and redefines where that character is going to be going for the rest of their quote-unquote life. I have a hard time thinking about above 200, though. Fables, the Batman Green Arrow question crossover that heavily involves Lady Shiva and Osensei, the man who trained her.
So somewhere between 200 and 220 then.
Okay, 205 is the first arc of the Stephanie Brown Batgirl. Above or below that?
I'd say above.
So then between 200 and 205, a very narrow range.
202.
I was going to say either 202 or 203. I'm willing to say 202.
Holy Terror continues to be a favorite.
Yes. Well, Abigail, thank you as ever for coming on the show. It's appreciated.
Thank you as always for having me.
And that does it for this week. Next week, we're back to Will's bookshelf for 2 random selections and the next volume of Batman 66. Remember, you can support the podcast on Patreon at patreon.com/batchatwithmattandwill, where you can get shoutouts, bonus content, pick a story, and even come on the show. We'd like to thank those Patreon backers: Dan Grote, Josh Wheel, Mrs. Abigale Heartbalm,
Yay!
Asma Fangirl, Tony Thornley,
Go Aggies!
Sam Hopper,
Go to bed, Sam. It is late in the United Kingdom.
John Wickham,
John, you beautiful boy. You beautiful, beautiful boy.
Tim Rooney, Giorgio Sergioli, David Wheel,
World's greatest gray belt,
Alexander Wheel, Matt McThorne,
McThorny,
Dan Off,
barely newer,
Nate Randell, Daniel Mosley, Ross Holmes,
Mr. Random Ace,
Will Crisp,
me compadre,
Carlos Cordova, Jordan Jennings, Charlie Etheridge Nunn, Sean Shambly, The Final Wraith,
the scariest wraith.
and Kyle Still. for their support.
Still the one.
This show is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music /Audible, YouTube Music, Podbean, and on comicsxf.com. New episodes drop every Thursday. You can find me on Blue Sky, where I talk about comics and other random things, and Letterboxd, where I review all the movies I watch, both at MattLaz1013.
Oh, you can continue to find me on Twitter at Will Nevin. I don't know why. I'm gonna stuff some food in my food hole, and then I'm gonna go to bed because I'm tired. Good night, Huntsville.
And be sure to visit ComicsXF at comicsxf.com or ComicsXF on Blue Sky for our weekly Friday Bat Chat roundup of new Bat books, for my other show, the ComicsXF Interview Podcast, where my longtime best friend Dan Grote and I interview comics creators, retailers, publishers, journalists, and other related tradespeople, as well as all the other stuff Will and I are writing. And stay safe out there, folks. Gotham is not a place to be after dark.